At my baby shower, my father-in-law grinned as he handed me an envelope and announced to the room, 47 reasons my daughter should leave you. The laughter came instantly. Champagne glasses clinked. Phones lifted to record. Even my wife Emma let out a small chuckle beside me. I stood frozen beneath pastel balloons and paper clouds, meant to celebrate our unborn child. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. Around me, relatives leaned forward, eager for entertainment. My father-in-law basked in the attention, like a man delivering the punchline of a joke he had rehearsed for years. "Read it," someone called. I opened the packet. Each page listed another insult. Too quiet, too ordinary, not ambitious enough, not worthy of his daughter. The room laughed harder with every page. Then I reached the final sheet. "Emma, would you read this page aloud?" Her smile disappeared the moment she saw it. And suddenly nobody was laughing anymore. My name is Daniel, and for 7 years I had been married to Emma, the woman I believed would always stand beside me when it mattered most. We met when neither of us had much. I worked long shifts, saved every extra dollar, and quietly built a stable life while she pursued her career. I never needed recognition for it. Seeing our future take shape was enough. What I never fully accepted was that her father, Richard, had disliked me from the beginning. To him, success was measured by titles, luxury cars, and the ability to dominate a room. I possessed none of those qualities. I listened more than I spoke. I preferred results over attention. Richard interpreted that as weakness. Over the years, his comments became a family tradition. At holidays, he mocked my job. At birthdays, he compared me to wealthier husbands. The room would laugh, and I would smile politely to keep the peace. The painful part wasn't Richard. It was Emma's silence. She rarely joined his jokes, but she rarely stopped them either. Every excuse sounded reasonable in isolation. "That's just how Dad is. He doesn't mean it. Don't take it personally." Eventually, people stop seeing patience as strength. They start seeing it as permission. And by the time that baby shower arrived, Richard believed he could humiliate me publicly without consequences. The baby shower wasn't the beginning of the humiliation. It was simply the first time Richard decided to perform it in front of an audience. For months leading up to the event, the insults had become sharper, wrapped in smiles that allowed him to deny any bad intention. When Emma and I announced the pregnancy, Richard raised his glass and said, "Let's hope the baby inherits her mother's drive." A few guests laughed nervously. I noticed Emma staring down at her drink instead of meeting my eyes. Later, while we toured a larger house for our growing family, Richard walked through the living room, running a finger along the wall. "Nice place," he said. Not exactly what I imagined for my grandchild, though. The realtor suddenly found something fascinating outside the window. Nobody responded. Nobody ever did. At family dinners, Richard would ask everyone about their careers before turning to me last. His voice always softened into that same patronizing tone. "And how's work going, Daniel? Still keeping things modest?" The table would go quiet for a second before someone changed the subject. What bothered me wasn't the insult itself. It was the glances afterward. The quick looks between relatives, the uncomfortable smiles, the sense that everyone recognized the disrespect, but preferred convenience over confrontation. By then, I had begun noticing something else. Richard wasn't acting alone anymore. Emma had started keeping secrets from me, and the pauses before her answers were growing longer. The turning point came 3 weeks before the baby shower. Emma had left her laptop open on the dining table while she took a call in another room. I wasn't searching for anything. I was simply clearing space for dinner when a notification appeared on the screen. It was a message from Richard. My name caught my eye. Against my better judgment, I looked. The conversation stretched back months. There were dozens of messages about me. Richard mocked my income, my personality, even my role as a future father. What stopped me cold wasn't his cruelty. It was Emma's participation. Not constant, not enthusiastic, but enough. Enough jokes, enough agreement, enough silence disguised as neutrality. Then I found the attachment, a document titled, 47 Reasons My Daughter Should Leave You. The same title printed on the envelope now resting in my hands at the baby shower. My stomach dropped, but something else happened too. For the first time, I stopped feeling surprised. Everything suddenly made sense. The long pauses, the nervous glances, the way Emma never defended me when it mattered. That night, I didn't argue. I didn't confront anyone. Instead, I saved copies of every message, every email, and every revision made to that document. By the time the baby shower arrived, I wasn't standing there in shock. I already knew exactly what was inside the envelope. And I knew what was written on the final page, the page neither. Richard nor Emma expected anyone else to read. Once I understood what was happening, I stopped reacting emotionally and started paying attention. For years, I had worked as a financial compliance manager for a regional firm. My job required patience, documentation, and an understanding of how small details could reveal much larger truths. I wasn't a lawyer or an investigator, but I knew the value of records. Instead of confronting Emma or Richard, I quietly gathered information. The document itself told a story. Each saved version showed who had edited it and when. The earliest drafts belonged to Richard, but several later revisions came from Emma's account. Some of the harshest comments had been added only days before the baby shower. That hurt more than I expected. Still, emotion wasn't useful. Facts were, I archived screenshots, downloaded message histories, and stored copies with timestamps. Then I noticed something else hidden among the conversations. Richard wasn't merely insulting me. He had been pressuring Emma for months to leave the marriage and move closer to him after the baby was born. He repeatedly described me as an obstacle rather than a husband. The final page of the document contained those messages. Not opinions, not jokes, direct statements revealing exactly how far he had gone. I printed that page separately and placed it back into the envelope exactly where it belonged. Then I waited. Sometimes the strongest move is allowing people to reveal themselves publicly while believing they are completely in control. The room was still smiling when I handed the final page to Emma. I remember the soft music playing in the background, the rustle of gift wrapping paper, and Richard standing proudly beside me with a drink in his hand, expecting another round of laughter. Instead, silence arrived first. Emma's eyes moved across the page. Then they stopped. The color drained from her face. A second later, she looked at her father. Not at me, at him. For the first time all afternoon, Richard seemed uncertain. What is it? Someone asked. Neither of them answered. Emma's hands began to shake. The page contained a chain of messages Richard never expected anyone else to see. Messages where he encouraged her to undermine our marriage, separate me from my future child, and publicly embarrass me until I finally left on my own. His own words, printed in black and white. Nothing edited, nothing exaggerated, just the truth. The guests weren't laughing anymore. One by one, people started asking questions. Richard attempted a smile and claimed everything was a misunderstanding, but his confidence disappeared the moment Emma quietly whispered, "Dad, why would you write this?" The room felt smaller. He searched for an explanation that never came. Then Emma ripped the entire packet in half. The sound echoed through the room. Nobody applauded. Nobody defended him. For the first time in years, Richard stood exactly where he had placed me countless times before, alone, exposed and unable to control the story. The fallout wasn't explosive. It was quieter than that. In the days following the baby shower, family group chats went silent. Invitations stopped arriving. Conversations that once revolved around Richard suddenly avoided his name altogether. People had seen enough. Several relatives reached out to me privately. Some apologized for laughing at earlier jokes. Others admitted they had always been uncomfortable with the way Richard treated me but had convinced themselves it wasn't their place to interfere. That realization seemed to weigh heavily on them. Richard, meanwhile, faced something he had never experienced before. Consequences without an audience. He could no longer hide behind charm or dismiss criticism as oversensitivity. The evidence had come from his own words. His reputation didn't collapse overnight, it simply cracked. And once people start questioning someone they once admired, those cracks become impossible to ignore. The hardest part involved Emma. She was forced to confront not only her father's manipulation, but also her own silence. Trust doesn't disappear in a single moment. It erodes gradually, through every laugh, every excuse, every time someone chooses comfort over courage. For me, the experience changed something deeper than my marriage. It changed my sense of self-worth. That's why this story matters. Most betrayals don't begin with dramatic acts. They begin with small humiliations that people are expected to tolerate. The danger isn't the insult itself. The danger is believing you deserve it. The moment you stop believing that, everything changes. A year ago, I would have measured victory differently. I would have wanted an apology, a dramatic confession, or some perfect moment where everyone admitted I had been right all along. Life rarely works that way. What I gained was something more valuable: clarity. In the months after the baby shower, Emma and I began counseling. Some conversations were painful. Others revealed truths we should have faced years earlier. Rebuilding trust wasn't quick, and there were no guarantees. But for the first time, both of us were speaking honestly instead of protecting comfortable illusions. Richard remained distant, Not because I pushed him away, because the image he had spent decades building could no longer survive scrutiny. People treated him differently once they saw what was beneath the charm. As for me, I stopped chasing approval from people determined to withhold it. When our child was born, I held that tiny life in my arms and understood, something that had taken me years to learn. Respect isn't something you beg for, it's something you protect. I no longer needed to prove my worth to a room full of spectators. A difficult father-in-law, or even the version of myself that had accepted disrespect for the sake of peace. The revenge was never destroying Richard. It was refusing to become the man he wanted me to believe I was. And as I watched my child fall asleep against my shoulder, I realized the loudest victory is often the one that doesn't need to be announced at all.